a lunch speech, and given the topic and everything, and the news was pretty somber, as you will see, I think I offered to buy everybody a drink. But instead, everybody got pizza today. The remote is still not working. That's kind of how I feel right now about the economy, and in particular the interaction between our great financial system and our great economy. Just by way of background, and I'm sure most of you know these facts and figures about how big credit markets are in the US. The total amount of private US debt outstanding at the moment, so this isn't including government debt, this is just in the hands of the private sector, $51 trillion. And if you want to know how many zeros that is, that's a lot of dollars. $51 trillion approximately of debt, credit outstanding in the US at the moment. Of that, about $11 trillion of it is in the form of home mortgages, loans for the purpose of buying a house. $11 trillion of debt outstanding on homes. About $3 trillion in consumer credit. Consumer credit is things like credit cards, auto loans, personal loans from banks and other financial institutions. About $3 trillion of that. Just to give you a basis for comparison for how big that is, because that's like, wow, that's really big, but the US economy is also really, really big. We generate income in the US economy currently at a rate of about $14 trillion a year, so our flow of income is about 14. The amount of debt that we have is 51. So we owe a lot more than we're earning, but keep in mind, this is a stock, the total amount outstanding, this is the flow of income currently. So the credit market in the US has evolved fairly significantly over the last few decades, and in the last decade in particular. And what it's basically done is shifted from a model that was described as originate. You originate a loan, and then you hold on to that loan. Like a bank would buy a mortgage and keep that mortgage on its books for the life of that loan. Would lend money to a business that wanted to start up, lend money to that business, and track the performance of that business over time for the life of the loan. Now the dominant model is one which is originate the loan and then distribute it. Peel off pieces of the loan, repackage it, securitize it, turn it into a new debt instrument, and then sell that on to somebody else. And what that has created is a much more complex and a much more opaque, less transparent system, financial system. More complex because there are just many more actors in the financial transaction, and more opaque because those actors are separated. They're separated both in terms of space, where they're located, and also in terms of the amount of information that each of the pieces have about the investments. Take, for example, a mortgage-backed security, MBS. So it's a security, a debt instrument that was generated out of a portfolio or a slice of a portfolio of mortgages. Home buyers bought a house, the bank bought a mortgage to provide the funds to buy the house, take that mortgage, another mortgage, put similar ones together, repackage them, and then sell them to somebody else where the income that's going to be generated is going to be some fraction of the interest payments that the homeowners will be paying for the underlying mortgages. Think of some, this isn't a complete list, but if you think of some of the participants in this process, you've got the borrower, the home buyer, you've got the mortgage broker, you've got the originator of the loan, which probably is the bank, you've got the securities issuer, the person who packages those mortgages together to create a new debt instrument, a security, the underwriter, the person who's going to assess the standards on the securities that are issued. You've got the asset fund manager that's going to be the purchaser of those securities, like a money market mutual fund or some other asset fund. You've got the ultimate investor, the person who invests in the asset fund. So you've got many more participants, and you can see the investor is much less connected to the underlying asset, both physically and informationally. If that's a word, informationally. Physically, because these things are purchased locally. People in New Zealand, that is where my accent is from, although I don't think I really have an accent anymore, but some people tell me I still do. Originally I'm from New Zealand, and New Zealanders bought mortgage-backed securities issued in the United States. And informationally, because at each stage in this process, there was really no incentive mechanisms in here to preserve information, because it was originate the loan, then distribute it. Once it's distributed, it's gone. You make your profit from the fees or the transaction cost, the fees that you charge for the packaging of the mortgage, and you pass it on. But you don't necessarily pass along any information other than you have this thing, and there's a market for it. People were willing to buy it, and so they purchased it, and they sold it on. At each stage, information isn't really getting preserved. In some ways, information is getting destroyed, in large part because there's really strong confidence, reliance on external rating agencies. Standard & Poor's or Moody's and other institutions that were designed to rate bonds. You hear about bonds, a AAA bond or a BBB bond, or BB, et cetera, et cetera. They're acronyms that come from rating agencies who look at the attributes of a security and say, yeah, this is very high risk, so it goes further down the alphabet, or very low risk and it's high up the alphabet. And so people tended to look at the rating agencies for guidance about the quality, the riskiness of this process. Well, the process kind of went haywire. It was, in hindsight, looking at it, incredibly fragile. And all it took was a trigger, something to happen to make the whole system feed back on itself in a very negative way, resulting in a huge loss of confidence. Loss of confidence not just in counterparties, one the lender and the borrower, or the lender and the depositor, but loss of confidence in the integrity of the whole system. And what was the trigger? Well, the trigger was some of those mortgages, and especially the so-called subprime component, the subprime being, if you like, the riskiest piece of the mortgage business, lending to people whose credit scores are not that stellar, maybe just recently out of college, so they run up a lot of credit card debt and stuff, but they still want to own a home, so they run out, get a loan, and loan terms were very attractive 3-4 years ago for